In this lecture, we're going to look at words and phrases connected to social issues. And here are the 7 words and phrases: civil rights, secular, ethics, feminism, humanitarian, refugee, catastrophe. So here's the first of them: civil rights. Civil rights are the rights that people have in a society, for example, to be equal, to be treated equally in the law regardless of your gender or your race or your religion, to do with equal opportunities. Martin Luther King was a famous civil rights activist from the 1960s in America, and here is a civil rights march with Dr. Martin Luther King in America. Civil rights. The word civil means, or people, civilians in a country. So, for example, they introduced new laws guaranteeing civil rights. The police were accused of violating her civil rights. Martin Luther King led the campaign for civil rights in the southern states. We often talk about civil rights abuse or abuses, civil rights violation, and we grant civil rights to people, or we promote civil rights. The next word is secular. Secular. So you use the word secular to describe things that have no connection with religion. So it's something that's non-religious, that is not religious. Secular. So, for example, he spoke about preserving the country as a secular state. There was a need for greater secular education. Turkey is one of the most successful secular states of the Middle East. So it's ruled by an elected president and prime minister, not by a religious leader. So we talk about a secular state, secular society, secular authority, and increasingly secular. So the Western countries in Europe are increasingly secular. We talk about secularism as well. Secularism is the idea that secular ideas are good, that a secular country should be promoted. Secular is quite a specialised word, but civil, worldly, non-religious are quite close. Temporal is a fairly old-fashioned word for non-religious. Lay. And material. You focus on material things rather than spiritual things. Ethics. Ethics. Ethics are moral beliefs and rules. About right and wrong, what's right, what's wrong. It's to do with philosophy. So, for example, its members are bound by a rigid code of ethics. Doctors claimed that such an action was a violation of medical ethics, and corporate ethics have reached a low point. They focus on the bad things. So we can talk about the ethics of something, medical ethics, work ethics, an ethics committee. Ethics committees look at right and wrong and things that have gone wrong, bad deeds. So ethics. And we talk about ethical things. Ethical is the adjective. Some synonyms for ethics: morals, right and wrong, beliefs, principles, possibly values as well. Feminism. Feminism. Feminism is the belief and aim that women should have the same rights, power, and opportunity as men. So they should be treated equal. Feminism has still to change the lives of the majority of women. She was a champion of radical feminism. Radical feminism. Proponents of feminism have challenged traditional gender roles. So some common collocations: radical feminism. So that's somebody who believes very strongly in feminism, doing things like giving positive discrimination for women. Feminism challenges something. Feminism challenges stereotypes. Feminism teaches things. Feminism influences things. It's a very specialised word, but you can talk about women's liberation. Women's lib was the name given to the feminist movement in the 1960s, 1970s. Humanitarian. Humanitarian ideas or behaviour is about trying to help people who are suffering in some way. So here's some humanitarian relief, some food being distributed to people who need help. And of course it's to do with humans, to do with people. It's thinking about humans, caring for the human race. So for example, the air bombing campaign was criticised on humanitarian grounds, so it hurt people. The UN and Red Crescent orchestrated humanitarian aid. Philanthropists and humanitarians head the Australian Honours List issued today. A philanthropist is usually somebody with lots of money who gives it away to help people for humanitarian causes. We can have humanitarian relief, humanitarian aid, humanitarian grounds, humanitarian crisis. So again, it's a very specialised word, but some similar words: charitable, altruistic, humane, philanthropic, benevolent, and public-spirited. Often we need humanitarian relief for refugees. So a refugee is somebody who's had to flee danger, who's had to flee war. They've had to leave their homes because it was too dangerous, there wasn't enough food, or maybe there was war taking place, or a bad government. People that have been forced to leave their homes. Refugee. A refugee is somebody who wants refuge. A refuge is a safe place, away from any danger. For example, about 100 refugees have escaped from a detention camp. Thousands of refugees crossed Europe after the war. The refugee crisis has dominated TV coverage. We often talk about resettling refugees, refugee camp, help refugees, and you're a refugee from something, maybe a country, refugee from Syria, or maybe a refugee from a war or from famine. Refugee. Refugees used to be called displaced people or displaced persons. After the Second World War, we saw in texts, newspapers, lots of people talking about displaced people. Migrant is similar to refugee. Emigrant, asylum seeker. An asylum seeker is somebody who goes through a formal process. Catastrophe. So a catastrophe is an unexpected event that causes great suffering or damage. So here's a picture of the aftermath of an earthquake in San Francisco in 1906. It was a catastrophe. War between the two countries would be a catastrophe. The world is facing an environmental catastrophe. The hurricane had a catastrophic impact on the economy of the coast. So there it's an adjective, catastrophic. Catastrophe, catastrophic. You can have a major catastrophe, an environmental catastrophe. We often want to avert a catastrophe, and things can have catastrophic consequences too. So here's catastrophe again, catastrophes and catastrophic, the adjective. Some synonyms for catastrophe: disaster, calamity, devastation, cataclysm, tragedy. So there are your 7 words for social issues, civil rights, secular, ethics, feminism, humanitarian, refugee, and catastrophe. In this video, we're going to look at 7 words connected with social issues. And here are the 7 words: inequality, deprived, elite, redistribute, privilege, underprivileged, multicultural. And here's the first word: inequality. Inequality. Social inequality is the difference in social status or wealth or opportunity between people and between different groups of people. So here in this picture, you've got 2 groups of people. You have the old man at the bottom and the 3 young women on the right. There's a social inequality between them. The young women have lots more opportunity, more wealth than the older man. So inequality means unequal. So for example, people are raising concerns about increasing social inequality. Our policies aim to reduce inequality. There is still significant inequality between the sexes in many European countries. So we can have social inequality, inequality in something, so inequality between things, and if you want to get rid of inequality, you can tackle inequality. And some synonyms for the word: inequity, injustice, disparity. So disparity between different social groups. The next word is deprived. Deprived. Deprived people, or people from deprived areas, do not have the things that people consider to be essential in life. For example, acceptable living conditions, good living conditions, or a decent education. So, for example, they are probably the most severely deprived children in the country. There are considerable problems associated with life in a deprived area. He endured a deprived childhood, but ultimately found success and happiness. Some common collocations: deprived area, deprived neighbourhood, deprived childhood, deprived upbringing. So deprived. Deprivation is the noun that comes from deprive. So deprived. Underprivileged is a common synonym: destitute, disadvantaged, and needy. Needy. Here's the next word: elite. Elite. This is pretty much the opposite of underprivileged or deprived. This is for the top, the people at the top of the pyramid, if you like. So elite, you can refer to the most powerful, the richest, the most talented people within a particular group or place or country as the elite. So the elite go at the top, the political elite, for example, the wealthy elite. The country was ruled by a wealthy elite. The governing elite are often out of touch with ordinary people. The debate is dominated by an intellectual elite. We often talk about a governing elite or a political elite. An elite often rules a country, and you can challenge the elite. And you might have more than one elite, so elites. Elitist is the adjective, and elitism is a noun. So some synonyms. The elite is often the same as the establishment. So the governing or the wealthy parts of society is the establishment or the ruling class. Sometimes oligarchy as well. Oligarchy is a small group of people who run a country. Here's the next word, redistribute. Redistribute. So if something such as money or property or land is redistributed, it is shared among people or organisations in a different way. So money is moved around to other people. So it's moved from the way it was previously to different people. So it means distribute again, of course. So wealth was redistributed more equally after the revolution. Taxes can be used to redistribute income. And the communists embarked on a program of land redistribution. The third sentence is a noun here, redistribution. So you can redistribute wealth or land or income or power. And as a noun, as a verb, redistributes, redistributing, redistributed. Redistribution is the noun. And some synonyms, reorganize and shift, move. The next word is privilege. Privilege. A privilege is a special right or advantage that only one person or one group has. So, for example, the Russian Federation has issued a decree removing special privileges for government officials. Members of Parliament enjoy special rights and privileges. Member nations of the European Union have mutual trading privileges. And you can grant a privilege or you enjoy a privilege. But you can also abuse a privilege, and you can often have special privileges too. So privileges, you can be privileged as well. That's the adjective, privileged people. And some synonyms, benefit, advantage, entitlement, right. Underprivileged is the next word, underprivileged. So we've had privileged, now underprivileged. So underprivileged people have less money, fewer possessions, fewer opportunities than other people in society. So this boy here, he's an underprivileged boy, has very few possessions. So underprivileged. Not unprivileged. We say underprivileged instead. So, for example, this charity helps underprivileged children learn to read. Government cuts had a great impact on underprivileged families. The inner city was a ghetto for the underprivileged. We often talk about an underprivileged child or family You may come from an underprivileged background. And when we talk about underprivileged people in general, we say the underprivileged. And some synonyms: poor, impoverished, disadvantaged, needy. And the next word, multicultural. Multicultural, which means consisting of or relating to people of many different nationalities or cultures or racial groups. So here you've got a multicultural procession of people, different flags showing the different nationalities. You've got people from different cultural and ethnic and racial groups. It's multicultural seen here. Many cultures, it means many cultures. So, for example, there are many advantages for children growing up in a multicultural society. The school curriculum takes a multicultural perspective. Many neighbourhoods in large cities contain multicultural communities. So you can have a multicultural society or a multicultural community, multicultural approach, multicultural curriculum. So multicultural. Multiculturalism is a situation in which all of the cultures within a country have equal rights and opportunities. And it can also refer to policies that promote cultural diversity rather than what we call assimilation. Assimilation is when people from different cultures kind of merge together, live together, but multiculturalism is sometimes about keeping people not so much separate, but by respecting different cultures. And some synonyms: diverse, ethnically diverse, multiracial, and inclusive. So there are your 7 words for social issues: inequality, deprived, elite, redistribute, privilege, underprivileged, multicultural.
In this lecture, we're going to look at 7 words connected to population. Population, which basically means people. And the 7 words are civilian, demography, indigenous, migrate, opinion poll, overpopulation, per capita. And the first word is civilian. Civilian. Now, in a military situation, a civilian is anyone who is not a member of the armed forces, who is not a soldier, So in the picture here, these are the civilians, because they're not soldiers, of course. But you can also use the word as an adjective for non-military things, civilian. Let's look at some example sentences. So this use of civilian is an adjective. It was difficult to return to civilian life after 12 years in the military. So civilian life is an adjective form of civilian. It is thought that there were 190,000 civilian casualties during the Iraq War. So civilian casualties, people who are not soldiers. Both soldiers and civilians were killed in the battle. So this is using civilian as a noun. So the plural of civilian is civilians. Some common collocations: we talk about civilian population, civilian casualty. You can attack a civilian or protect a civilian or protect civilians. And some synonyms: Citizen. Although citizen is a more general form of the word. Non-combatant, so somebody who does not fight. So combat means you're fighting. Non-military and private citizen. So civilian. The next word is demographic. 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 This means something that relates to the study of population, in particular the changes in the numbers of births, deaths, marriages, and also disease in a community, in a population over a period of time. So it's to do with statistics. And it can be used as an adjective or a noun. And demo comes from the Greek word demos, which means people. And graphy, which means the study of. So demographic is the study of people. Here are some example sentences. Industrialization has caused many demographic changes. So changes to statistics in the population. You could also say industrialization has led to changing demographics. Let's look at those two sentences again. Industrialization has caused many demographic changes. That's an adjective. But here we're using the word as a noun, changing demographics. Here's another noun use. Most of my readers are in the 65 to 80-year-old demographic. Now in business, a demographic is a group of people in a society, especially people in a particular age group. So demographic, and the noun form is demography. Demography is an uncountable noun. It's the study of changes in a population, but it's not very often used. Demographic is more commonly used. And we also use the word demographics. Demographics are the actual statistics. So if you have statistics about the population, then you have demographics about the population. We talk about demographic changes, demographic profile, changing demographics, the key demographic. It's a very precise word. So there are no obvious synonyms, perhaps statistics, but that's a much more general word than demographic, which is very precise. The next word is indigenous. Indigenous. You stress the second syllable, dig. Indigenous. If a person is indigenous to a country, it means they were born in that country, or their family comes from that country. So that person or the family did not move there. They did not migrate to the country. So people are indigenous to a particular country if they've lived there or their family has lived there for a long time. A culture or a language can be indigenous as well. And genus on the end. Genus means born. Indi means native, so it's native born in effect. Here are some example sentences. The Aztecs were one of the indigenous peoples of Mexico because they were always there in Mexico for a very, very long time, for thousands of years. The red fox is indigenous to parts of eastern USA, so it comes from there. It wasn't brought over on a ship. The red fox has always been there. The village is surrounded by hundreds of indigenous plants. So plants can be indigenous as well as people and animals. Some common collocations. We talk about the indigenous population, indigenous people, indigenous culture. And you can be indigenous to somewhere. Indigenous to eastern USA. And some synonyms for indigenous, native, homegrown, local. So indigenous. The next word is migrate. Migrate. If people migrate, they move from one place to another place. And they often do that to find work or to live somewhere. And animals migrate as well. So in the picture here, you have some birds and they are migrating to find some warmer weather. Some example sentences. People migrate from the countryside to the city in search of work. So they move to the city. Many birds migrate to Africa in the winter. Early humans migrated in search of food. Some forms for the word. It's a verb, so migrates, migrating, migrated. And the noun form is migration. So a migration of people, migration of birds. Somebody who migrates is known as a migrant. Migrant. But it's more common to use the word immigrant. Immigrant, which suggests that somebody has not just moved, which is migrant, but also lives in the place they moved to, which is immigrant. Some common collocations: you migrate from somewhere and to somewhere. A worker migrates. You can also use it as an adjective. You can talk about a migrant worker. And some synonyms: move for the verb form, relocate. Emigrate is another verb. So you leave. This emphasizes that you leave somewhere. And immigrate is the verb form, which suggests you're moving to somewhere. So migrate. The next phrase is opinion poll. Opinion poll. An opinion poll involves asking people's views on a particular subject, their opinions, especially one that concerns politics. So asks the opinions of the population. Here are some example sentences. Nearly 60% of people questioned in a recent opinion poll supported the government. Even though opinion polls showed otherwise, Trump won the election. Opinion polls suggest that there is support for the policy. Of course, the plural form of this is opinion polls. Somebody who carries out the opinion poll is known as an opinion pollster. So the person who stands with a clipboard ticking boxes is the opinion pollster. Opinion polls suggest is a common collocation, or show. Opinion polls indicate. And some synonyms: survey, simply just poll as well. So, opinion poll. The next word is overpopulation. Overpopulation. If there is a problem of overpopulation in an area, then there are more people living there that can be looked after, that can be supported properly. So when we talk about overpopulation, it's a problem because there are too many. There are more people than the area can support. Some example sentences: the region was suffering from overpopulation. There were too many people there. Maybe some went hungry. Food shortages stemmed from rapid overpopulation. Overpopulation kept agricultural wages at pitiful rates. Very bad rates. People were very poor. Some common collocations: overpopulation in a place. So overpopulation in somewhere. Rapid overpopulation, when it's very quick. We talk about the problem of overpopulation. Overcrowding is a synonym. That's the only synonym that I can think of. So overpopulation. You can see this city is overpopulated. Too many people there. The next word or phrase is per capita. Per capita. The per capita amount of something is the total amount of something in a country or area divided by the number of people in that country or area. It comes from the Latin capita, which means head. Capita means head. Per means for each. So in other words, it means for each head, for each person. So for example, we say Norway has the highest per capita income in the world. So you total the total income of Norway and divide it by the number of people, the number of heads in the country. The per capita consumption of alcohol has dropped over the past 2 years. So each person drinks less alcohol. This year, the French will eat about 40% more fresh apples per capita than the Germans. This is a slightly different use of per capita. Here is actually an adverb, because they eat a certain number. Eat per capita is describing eat. Some common collocations: we talk about per capita income, per capita consumption, income per capita, consumption per capita. Some synonyms: per head, per person, or for each person. So per capita. So those are your 7 words: civilian, demography, indigenous, migrate, opinion poll, overpopulation, per capita. So do the practice quiz and complete the vocabulary record to help you remember those 7 words.